Welcome to the Jaron Jarvis channel. I am Jaron Jarvis. Today, I would like to introduce to you, people who dream too much. Depressed people dream more. Did you know that? Some studies say you can ease depression by interrupting the REM sleep cycles of depressed people. The downside is that it can make people more aggressive and anxious because they aren't processing things during their dream cycles. I knew that because I went looking for research in the university library. I've always been someone who dreamed vividly, but during the worst year of my life, don't worry, I won't bore you with the details of my personal life, I found I was dreaming more often than ever before and more vividly. I decided to do some digging around in the university library to see if they had any studies on it. I grew up in this town. I'll be redacting names and locations throughout due to privacy concerns, a small college town that you probably only know of if you live within 100 miles of it. It's a gorgeous spot, and somehow I never left. Dad was the longtime editor of the local paper and I followed in his footsteps. I had considered leaving, but when we lost Mom I went to school here, majoring in journalism, of course, and stayed at home to take care of him. I think he regretted that I never had a regular college experience, but I wouldn't have changed it for the world. Anyway, after 4 years with the college paper he gave me a job working for him. I've been there for 15 years, staying on even after he passed. His friend Ben S. took over and it just never made sense to leave. Ben's a great boss. He and my dad were close growing up before Ben decided to travel and see the world as a writer for a travel publication, but 15 years later he turned up and went to work for my dad, said he had gotten his travel bug out of his system. They were close until my dad passed, and then he took over for him. So, after months of really intense dreams I decided to see if there was something I could find on the healthiest way to sleep better. Somehow I was sleeping more and waking up feeling more tired. So I took off one afternoon and walked over to campus. I don't say this just because I'm terribly biased, but campus is beautiful. It's a postcard that would probably attract more students to a at best regionally known school if they did a little better marketing it. The library loomed over the lake on the far side of campus, a gorgeous Victorian building that was probably not suited for what it was used for. The building was ancient and needed a lot of expensive upkeep, but was so historic that they would never replace it. Ruth, the head librarian, is my aunt, so I gave her a hug and told her what I was looking for and she showed me where most of the sleep research was. I skimmed studies for a few hours and was not finding anything that really helped. Most of them were out of date and none were particularly helpful. I was packing up when Aunt Ruth mentioned she thought there was a bit more down in the archives. Benefits of being your aunt's only niece? Absolutely, so I headed downstairs. The archives always make me nervous. The ceilings are low and stuff is literally stacked everywhere on these ancient shelving systems that I'm afraid will collapse and trap me. The electricity isn't good, so the lights flicker constantly. I found the area and moved as quickly as I could through the studies. This information was even more outdated. People used to do some crazy things. I was about to leave when I noticed a file sticking up from below the shelf. The shelving systems were old and not particularly well designed, and it had slipped down behind the bottom shelf. Only a tiny piece of the corner was visible and honestly you had to be looking straight at it to even notice it. I pulled the files out to get to it, figuring at the very least I would be able to return this to its rightful place. That ended the second I saw the name on the cover, Dr. Reginald Thomas. Dr. Thomas is someone you know about only if you've lived in the town I have your whole life. He's kind of a legend here, but by having his rise and fall occur before the internet means a lot of stuff has been destroyed. It was just easier to cover stuff up back then. He was a genius. Graduated college at 15. Had 2 PhDs, in physics and psychology, oddly, by the time he was 21. He grew up in town and surprised everyone by accepting a position on the faculty here. Said that he needed the freedom a smaller school would offer him. The next few years were fascinating. Groundbreaking research combined with rumors of horrible experiments gone wrong. Whispers of suicides among study participants and weird sightings around campus. Finally there was a murder somehow connected to one of the studied and some people went missing after a fire in one of the labs. Thomas packed up and vanished, and there have rumors about what happened to him ever since. The university destroyed all his research, paid out some private settlements, and pretended he had never existed. And now I had a surviving copy of a study. I stuffed it in my bag and took off, waving to Aunt Ruth as she helped a student at the desk. At home I sat down to read what I had. It's a series of transcribed notes of a study run in the early 80s. I'll include it verbatim below. Study, dream elongation. Hypothesis, dreams present a mechanism for dealing with subconscious issues. Depressed individuals report more intense dreams. By artificially elongating REM sleep using pharmaceutical means, I believe I can allow people to fully process mental health issues and awake refreshed. Participants, I have selected 10 participants being treated at the local hospital for depression. They will be broken into 2 waves of 5. Wave A will commence after summer break has started to avoid interruptions. The 17th of May 1975, Wave A, Phase 1, commences today. Participants will be referred to as A1A5. The 5 participants will be kept in continuous REM sleep for 24 hours. Participants are 3 females and 2 males, all individuals battling depression but otherwise healthy. All participants are between the ages of 19 and 44. The 18th of May 1975, Phase 1 is complete. All participants noted feeling happier upon waking, though all expressed feelings of exhaustion. At a point between 10 and 13 hours all participants underwent a marked rise in heart rate and breathing. This period lasted between 32, for participant, A3, and 77 minutes, for participant, A4, and afterwards participants returned to baseline level of cardiovascular activity. Phase 2 will commence in 1 week. The 24th of May 1975, Wave A, Phase 2, commences today. Participants all reported feeling happiness earlier in week, but returning to baseline as the week continued. Participant A4, female, 19, also reported multiple recurring nightmares during the week. According to her, in the nightmares she was in a dark room and could hear maniacal laughing that would not stop. She also reported one episode of night terrors, featuring a glowing from behind her bedroom door and an inability to move. The 26th of May 1975, Phase 2 is complete. All participants were kept in REM sleep for 60 hours. There was a similar increase in cardiovascular activity at roughly the same time as in Phase 1. However, at exactly the 58-hour mark all participants showed greatly reduced cardiovascular activity as well as unusual brain patterns in the EEG. Most strangely, this activity happened in all 5 participants at exactly the same time. I will review the equipment to ensure that it is functioning properly. The 31st of May 1975, Wave A, Phase 3 commences today. Participants all reported feeling happiness throughout week with only a slight regression. However, all 5 participants reported the same recurring nightmare as participant A4 did last week. All also reported multiple instances of night terrors. Upon review, I learned that conversations in the interview room can be heard from the waiting room, and I am afraid I have introduced these ideas to the group accidentally. Further interviews will be conducted in the back office and I have placed a radio in the waiting room. The 6th of April 1975, Wave A, Phase 3 is complete. All participants were kept in a state of REM sleep for roughly 99.5 hours, though the original plan was to do this experiment for 100 hours. I am troubled by several occurrences. At 58 hours all participants underwent the same spontaneous transition to reduced cardiovascular output and unusual EEG activity. This continued uninterrupted until we reached 99 hours. At that time, all participants opened their eyes and began laughing hysterically. Curiously, brain scans reflect that they were all still asleep as this happened. I struggled to wake them over the next 30 minutes, and find myself quite shaken by the incident. However, despite some initial confusion, all participants seemed the happiest they have been. The 6th of July 1975, all participants of Wave A are dead. Within the span of 12 hours they all killed themselves. The university is tiring of these setbacks. Though since the participants were all depressed, this should be an easier one to clean up. I cannot imagine they will let me continue this work though. I am crushed. The 15th of June 1975, I spoke with someone with the police today. He told me that participant A4 was the only one who wrote any sort of note. She wrote, "We didn't wait long enough," over and over on the walls of her apartment before hanging herself. I wonder if this is a clue that I was close to a breakthrough. Perhaps by panicking when the laughter started I prevented a breakthrough. The 18th of June 1975, the university has been clear. I am not to continue with my work. I cannot stop though, not when we are so close to a breakthrough. The 28th of June 1975, I have assembled the participants of Wave B. With the upcoming holiday I have a small window where I can work privately. I will have to dispense with the earlier waves and proceed directly to Phase 4, keeping the participants in a state of REM sleep for 7 straight days. Instead of individual rooms, I will keep them together in one room in the basement where they are less likely to be noticed. Wave B, Phase 4. Hour 1, all participants have been induced into a state of REM sleep. Hour 9, participant B3 went through a state of heightened cardiovascular activity before returning to baseline. This period lasted 30 minutes. Hour 14, all participants have completed the state of heightened cardiovascular activity and returned to baseline. The shortest period was 28 minutes, the longest was 71. Hour 38, I slept for 8 hours, there has been no change during that time. Hour 58, all participants underwent the simultaneous drop in cardiovascular activity and the same spike in brain activity. Hour 67, no change. I slept for 6 hours. Hour 81, I wait for the laughter that is coming. Something about it terrifies me. Hour 99, spontaneous laughter from all participants. All participants have their eyes open, though the data reflects that they are still asleep. Hour 100, the laughter spontaneously stopped exactly an hour after it occurred. All participants have closed their eyes. Hour 111, I slept for 7 hours. Upon waking, the door was open to the room, but all participants are still asleep and none of the recordings reflect that they woke. It must not have been fully latched. Hour 120, my hands shake. All participants spoke in unison. The voice was booming and did not sound like their voice at all. I will transcribe their words. Professor, we are so glad to finally make your acquaintance. We never thought the gateway would be left open for so long. There is so much for us to teach you now that we are here. All the participants then stopped speaking in unison. I do not know what caused this. The 29th of June 1975, at the 125-hour mark I went to the bathroom, briefly leaving the room. When I returned, the participants were all missing and the lab was ablaze. I ran outside but the building was engulfed in the fire. Participants B2 and B3 died in the fire, along with 2 graduate students on other floors. It seemed that the participants had held the graduate students to the ground while the fire consumed them. Participant B4 was killed by police. He was naked and horribly burned, and tried to attack them with a street sign he pulled out of the ground. Participant B1 was found gibbering nonsensically in the library. I have medicated him and hope to be able to learn something of what has happened, but I fear his mind has been destroyed. There is no sign of participant B5. He vanished during the fire and is now missing. So honestly I'm shocked. It was all here, the fire, the deaths, the missing individual. I went to my editor Ben with it and said that we needed to write a story on it. It was a huge story. I was shocked when he shot it down. He said I didn't prove anything, that some student could have typed it up and hidden it there as a prank, knowing someone would find it there. Ben is old school, in his 60s, but hearing him shoot down this story was a real drag. I spent a few months poking around but Ben, as usual, was right. No one was going to comment on the record, and 43 years later there really wasn't even anyone around who could. I had a handful of typed up notes that could be fake, written by a student who heard the same room as I had and decided to play a joke. Dr. Thomas is long gone, even if he's still alive, and I don't have any way of verifying anything. It was a letdown, but I got too excited. I got back into the normal routine, and it wasn't 6 months later that I found myself back in the library trying to find some articles on its history. After being let down in the archives, I found myself walking by the area where I found the study. On a whim I took every book off the shelf and lifted it out to check underneath, but there was nothing there. As I looked at it, I realized that there was a small slit along the back of the shelf. If paper had passed by it, it could have just as easily gone through rather than sliding underneath the shelf. I cleared off the whole section of shelving and carefully moved it to see behind, and that's when I saw it, another piece of paper. This one was on university letterhead and had a list of the participants in the study. Participant A1, Alison F., female, 34, deceased, suicide. Participant A2, Robert R., male, 44, deceased, suicide. Participant A3, Christopher D., male, 32, deceased, suicide. Participant A4, Elizabeth R., female, 19, deceased, suicide. Participant A5, Heather B., female, 39, deceased, suicide. Participant B1, Corey S., male, 24, hospitalized. Participant B2, Rebecca G., female, 30, deceased, fire. Participant B3, Georgia K., female, 28, deceased, fire. Participant B4, Tony T., male, 43, deceased, officer-involved shooting. My blood turned to ice as I read the last line. Participant B5, Ben S., 20, missing.